Several years ago, I had the opportunity to team teach a course titled The Practice and Study of the Creative Process. The design of the course was interdisciplinary, and the three of us teaching the course represented different arts disciplines: visual art, music, and theater. The course goals were to provide tools and opportunities for students to learn about themselves as creative individuals, to explore new avenues of expression and cooperation through discovery, innovation, risk-taking, and interdisciplinary problem-solving, and to express themselves more effectively through candid conversation with peers. While the course was designed to provide a theoretical foundation about creativity, the majority of students who enrolled in the course were outside of the arts area. Over the 5 years the course was offered, majors from biology, chemistry, political science, business, and urban planning were joined by students in theater, music, creative writing, and arts. As you might imagine, this elicited some very interesting conversations as well as student projects. One of the assignments for this course was a series of short reflection papers from readings about a collaborative creative group such as the Manhattan Project or Experiment at Black Mountain, 2 case studies from the book Organizing Genius, The Secrets of Creative Collaboration by Walter Bennis. One of the most memorable student papers written during the course was by a young woman writing about the Manhattan Project, which is always an interesting example. I asked students to either write about someone within the group or someone who perhaps should have been part of the group, or someone her perspective might have been anonymous at the time. In the case of the student, she chose to be the alcoholic spouse of one of the scientists, who was also an environmentalist, and reflected about what it was like to be alone most of the time and the uncertainty of not knowing exactly what her husband was locked away doing day and night. While the reading never specifically stated that any of the spouses were heavy drinkers, it did describe the harsh conditions under which the families of the scientists had to live. In choosing to make the wife an alcoholic, this captured a potential consequence of being lonely and living in conditions. And by assigning the role of environmentalist to the wife, the student was also able to make a statement about the wife's character, the natural beauty of Los Alamos, and the foreboding after effects of nuclear bombs without ever directly making a political. I would say that the student approached this assignment in a very creative way by examining an historical event. When I first came to the University of Missouri, Kansas City 11 years ago, it was to serve as the director of a new academic center charged with engaging all academic areas in experimentation. This was accomplished through various research projects, seed funding to faculty, and community-based art projects. All the work produced by the center was interdisciplinary, and the majority of the projects had at least one arts discipline with another discipline. I want to take a couple of minutes to just talk about a research project, a community project, and courses. The Genetic Oralization Project, or GAP, explored employing tools used in making digital music to sonically represent and model data from complex genetic systems. The idea of the project emerged during a brainstorming session with a geneticist and a composer. The concept was that multivariate statistical data from large-scale genomic experience could be visualized by utilizing sound and thus provide sonic representations of changes between species at the molecular level. A primary goal of the project was to engage the sense of hearing into the analysis of data by developing musical analogs that reflect deviations between the Ka-Ks rates and other variables gathered among 16,000 genes studied. The confluence of art and science might seem a natural fit because artists, and to a lesser degree musicians, have turned to science for and experimentation in creating new works of art. But scientists in general have not readily turned to artists to solve problems with their research. GAP provided a unique opportunity to create a sensory solution to facilitate the interpretation of data. When asked to reflect on their efforts, the composer, Dr. Paul Rudy, noted, "When you enable common interest to be found, you get unique work." The Sublimated City Project was a community-based project that included the disciplines of anthropology, philosophy, music, and the visual arts in creating tandem public projects that explored and contextualized issues of community as it related to city and the problem of dispersal and fragmentation. The project was designed to enhance local citizens' sense of place and how creative choices serve and shape. The project provided citizen participation through a brief series of questions available through a website sought to answer how individuals viewed Kansas City from the perspective of sight, sound, smell, touch, and color, while also providing opportunities to mine participants' thoughts, comments, and memories. One of the most interesting questions and subsequent responses concerned sharing a secret about one's experience in the city. All of the responses were edited and re-recorded with city sounds to orally represent Kansas City and present a collective voice, void of borders, race, class, and education. The collected data also informed the three nations. Although the project presented numerous logistical and visual continuity challenges at the installation sites, despite these issues, the public dialogue that followed as a result of the project was very powerful. The following quote from Dr. James Shepard, the philosopher on the project, summarizes it best. Quote, "In returning to our places, in the midst of our place, that is Kansas City, we take time to see a part of ourselves we have left behind. In that seeing, a conversation takes place not only about who we are, but what we might want to become." The interdisciplinary courses developed through the center were designed to generate new ideas among the faculty and their students and to challenge both students and faculty to explore new ways of learning and to better understand their own creative potential and the nature of creativity and innovation as it applies to divergent academic areas. Instead of going through the courses per se, I just want to share with you a couple of quotes from the faculty who created these courses. Quote, this is one course I walk into every time suffused with the excitement of a century of discoveries. I always walk out recharged and ready to battle a day's research questions." This was Dr. Dindayal Dinakampandiam, School of Computing and Engineering, speaking about a course called Learning Metamodels in Biology from Nobel Prizes, and team taught by faculty from engineering, biological sciences, and chemistry. Quote, "We become more imaginative, detailed, prepared, and liberated working side by side," end of quote. Professor David G., Communication Studies, College of Arts and Sciences, and his experience of teaching a course, Creative Knowledge, Culture Production, with a sociology professor. And the last one, "Combining different disciplines and perspectives opens up one's creativity. Interdisciplinary collaboration will improve the creativity and persuasive abilities of lawyers, while at the same time will offer insights as to what makes a narrative appealing and persuasive." Professor Jeffrey Thomas from the School of Law, talking about a course, Narrative in the Art of Legal Persuasion, and team taught with faculty from law, communication studies, and creative writing. The examples just given illustrate creativity in action, but what stimulated that creativity? What inspires us to be creative? After thinking about creativity and innovation and their respective roles in education over the past several weeks, I decided to approach my assignment by reflecting on what has inspired me to be creative and identified three primary things that have fueled my creative endeavors: curiosity and a willingness to be open to new ideas, reflection on things that inspire me and the time to consider implications of that inspiration, and silence, the time and space to be alone in order to reflect. While not a definition per se, I see creativity as not one idea, but a frame of mind that can lead to a full array of ideas, a sort of coming together of unforeseen elements and stimulus, which ignite new ways of experiencing the ordinary. One's passion is also attributed to the creative process, and for me personally, it is not so much passion, at least not as a conscious level, but more a deep commitment to my curiosity about things and making connections among disparate parts. Two individuals who do embrace the idea of passion's connection to creative production are Viktor Frankl, who spoke to the importance of meaning in our lives, pointing to meaning as the impetus behind creative work. Educator Ken Robinson also cites passion in his book, The Element, with passion here a combination of loving what you do coupled with the skills to do it. According to Robinson, when passion and skills are married, you are in the element, a place where there is time to reflect and to define oneself and one's sense of purpose. Robinson goes on to add that the act of realizing an idea, or what he terms applied imagination, is what creativity is all about. Daniel Pink also speaks to purpose as a driver of creative output. Pink's thinking is more along the lines of seizing our moments of happiness and spirituality. Embracing our spirituality and finding meaning in our lives, while at the same time shifting our thinking from the left side of our brain to a bit more to the right. In other words, meaning is found in our experiences of the new. I find it curious that in the creative fields, moving from left to right is viewed as a good thing. All kidding aside, I want to caution us not to discount the importance of analytical thinking, which is a left brain activity, and its importance in creative endeavors. Creative thinking is an outgrowth of critical thinking, and it emerges through reflective practice. Reflective practice is a method that involves a willingness to sustain doubt, along with a willingness to consider other information that can inform that doubt through a process of analytical inquiry. Reflective practice and creative thinking are acts of intentionality, from which meaning can be discovered. The philosopher and educator John Dewey wrote extensively about our experience and how one comes to know what they know. For Dewey, our experiences with things are felt through their immediate qualities, that is, what can be ascertained at a surface level, but for a thing to become truly meaningful, one has to take notice of them. In short, one has to be present. To be reflective through presence requires stepping away from the cacophony of the world around us, to embrace silence. For silence is the fuel of reflective thought and the very place in which creative thinking can arise. Theologian Ralph Harper examined the importance of silence within our lives, noting that, quote, each order of experience has its own atmosphere. And the atmosphere of presence, of giving, of wholeness is silence. And it is through silence that one begins to really hear. There's a term used in psychology known as the third ear, a method of reflection employed to tease out the nuances that may have occurred during a patient assessment. What the third ear provides to the person reflecting is a visual record within the mind's eye of specific behaviors that a patient may have exhibited. These behaviors tend to be nonverbal cues that, when reflected upon, can speak volumes. For example, recalling a patient's fragrance or a new gesture. Such recollections are made possible through being totally present during the patient encounter and allowing silence to inform the reflective act from which creative solutions arise. In creativity, silence serves to inform our processes by putting us in touch with ourselves, while providing an environment from which we are able to engage in a dialogue with our own being. This is a quote from The World of Silence by Max Picard, which states, "Silence does not develop or increase in time, but time increases in silence, as though silence has absorbed it." Of course, we are never totally in silence, as artist John Cage so eloquently proved in his 4-minute, 33-second composition. But we can choose to take time to be silent, to think about the things that we encounter, and to allow those stimuli and experiences to develop through our mental processes. We can talk to ourselves, and while the majority of us do not openly admit to such practices, I can assure you that many creative insights have resulted through conversations with myself, which have occurred when I am alone and I am often silent. Perhaps one of the most compelling cases for silence and the need to personal space for being creative can be found in Susan Cain's book, Quiet. Not only does the author purport silence as critical for recharging oneself and for stimulating our creative juices, but as a necessity for those individuals who have been categorized as introverts. And at a time when open workspaces and forced collaboration is becoming the norm in many American corporations and classrooms. The author puts forth a very convincing argument about how the increasing lack of private space and silence may ultimately kill creativity. As we examine ways to expand creativity and innovation within the classroom and to teach students creative ways for solving problems through innovative solutions, we must also identify best methods for teaching students critical thinking skills and how these skills have application across the academic disciplines. Although educated as an art historian and later in art critical theory, I have been able to apply my knowledge across disciplines and more recently within the health sciences. After spending a year gaining competency in the terminology and grasping processes used in health assessment, I begin to recognize overlaps between how a patient assessment is conducted and how one comes to find meaning within a work of art through employing intentional looking or focused looking to be fully present with either a person or an object and to interact in such a way as to have a meaningful encounter. This is what psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan referred to as reciprocal looking. Quote, "As I look at someone or something, it looks back and our gazes cross each other. My gaze finds its answer in the person I see so that I can see its effects in his eyes. If looking at an inanimate object, it has a certain present. It looks back." In art, being present with an object is a path to finding meaning and for understanding the artist's intent, which leads to an informed judgment. In healthcare, being present with a patient is the path to finding meaning and for making a correct diagnosis, which leads to an informed judgment. Both are contingent on nuance. Why nuance? Because within nuance are the cues that lead to meaning. Drawing on Bloom's cognitive domain, which includes 6 cognitive levels: knowledge, comprehensive, application, analysis, and synthesis in evaluation, I realized I could assist health profession students to improve their patient assessment skills through teaching them methods used in art criticism and employing intentional looking. While the terms used may be dissimilar, the processes utilized are almost identical, and each concludes an informed decision. In patient assessment, one must recognize signs and symptoms, identify appropriate physiological systems associated with a disease or condition, along with all possible pathological processes presenting to them in the patient, differentiate between various pathological processes, and to recall likely causes for those processes, and evaluate all collected data for making an informed decision regarding possible cause and developing an appropriate plan of care. In art analysis, one draws on current knowledge regarding the work of art, describes the art's object's attributes through comparing and contrasting elements contained within the image, classifies, sorts, and records through further description of the object's attributes, analyzes through personal interpretation by applying creative insight into observed fact, synthesizes through contextual examination of one's own knowledge and experiences coupled with external data about the art object and the artist for gaining supplemental information used in forming an opinion, and lastly, evaluating, a creative combining of the descriptive and analytical components of the object with personal interpretation and expert opinion in order to arrive at an informed. So from this example, you can see the overlap between 2 very different disciplines. I would like to mention a couple other ways in which subjects grounded in the arts and humanities are informing the work we are doing at the School of Nursing and Health Studies at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. In 2 large training grants, we are using narrative and reflective practice, both using the arts and philosophical ethical reasoning, intentional looking use in the arts to discern meaning, interpersonal verbal and nonverbal communication, and motivational interviewing use in the behavioral sciences. We employ narrative and reflective practice both in the classroom and during clinical practicum. Students from 4 health profession schools are being trained to use narrative during patient assessments and for making evidence-based decisions in developing care plans. This approach provides patients the opportunity to tell their story during the assessment process and for health providers to be more fully present through active listening and thoughtful response. The use of narrative or storytelling as a diagnostic tool is also a method of ethical reasoning, providing a nuanced view focused on patient stories about situations that are context-bound, with the patient viewed as the moral agent who enacts choices. A more recent initiative is a humanistic mentoring training program for faculty to assist students at the graduate and undergraduate levels. Through this initiative, training is being developed based on concepts from humanist mentoring techniques, Socratic questioning, a method based in dialogue. The trainings will incorporate philosophy, the arts, and social and behavioral sciences to enhance awareness and understanding of the human experience. Processes employed through the project include mindfulness regarding self and others, engaged person-centered dialogue, reflective practice, capturing nuance through making connections, and enhance confidence through transference of skills from the classroom to patient-centered care. As evident from these examples, having been trained in the arts has not been a barrier to working in another profession, and in fact is helping me to assist health practitioners with changing the way in which we train health profession students and ultimately the way in which care is delivered. Admittedly, not a day goes by where I have not made the statement, I am an artist, not a clinician. But not as an apology, but rather as clarification as to what it is I bring to the conversation. My colleagues within the School of Nursing and Health Studies have embraced my contributions and view me as offering to them a new lens in which to view healthcare and health training programs. If there is one big takeaway point from my presentation, I hope that it is how to view the role of art in education as the impetus for creative endeavors, not by simply attaching the arts to another subject, but by utilizing the cognitive skills developed through the study of art and integrating it into problem solving, whatever the academic area. I close with an interesting example. In 1905, 2 very talented individuals were busy working on breakthroughs in 2 separate disciplines, Einstein in Bern, Switzerland, Picasso in Paris, France. Yet each functioned on very similar levels. Each was a member of a group. For Picasso, Picasso was the Café Culture of Paris. For Einstein, the Olympia Academy. Each sought a new breakthrough, a new aesthetic in science, a new aesthetic in art. Einstein published papers which culminated in E equals MC squared. Picasso was influenced by primitive art and film, which culminated in his breakthrough painting Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, and also was the beginning of Cubism. I leave you with one thought. While collaboration and dialogue with others is an important part of developing a new concept, there comes a time when the talking stops and the work begins. Even the arts have deadlines. There is a quote by Stephen Jobs that I like to use with my students, which states, "Real artists ship." What Job meant is that you can talk and dream all you like, but at some point you have to move the project out the door. Thank you.